In our family, this is the season for chili. Whether you have a game on and you're eating this because it's game day or because it is chilly outside and you just need a good comfort food, this is the way to go. Here are 3 amazing chilies. I'm telling you, each one of these is uniquely different and uniquely delicious. For dinner tonight, I need something easy because we have a really busy day ahead, and this is one of those recipes that you just put everything into the crock pot and you come back several hours later and it's ready to go. You have a great dinner. So we are going to make a buffalo chicken chili. Stay with me. Don't think that this means spicy. It doesn't necessarily have to. All right, before I head out for the day and run some errands, I'm gonna get my chili started. So we've got 1 pound of boneless, skinless chicken breasts here into my crock pot. I'm gonna be adding chili powder. Let's do about 2 teaspoons. Feel free to use your measuring spoons. Same with the cumin, about 2 teaspoons of cumin. This one I usually open because it doesn't come out very well. Some garlic powder, about 1 teaspoon of that. And I'm adding onion powder, about 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon. I'm gonna go a little heavier because we're not using regular onion in this. I am gonna add green onion, but not regular onion. Now you can add celery to this too if you want, but I am skipping that. I'm going to add the white part of some green onion in here. I'll probably do 2, and then I'm gonna save the green for the, garnish. That's the word I'm looking for. Now, even though my husband doesn't love corn inside of things, I do think it'll be really good in this one. I have about 1/2 bag left of this shoe peg corn, so I'm gonna add that in. A can of fire roasted diced tomatoes. I'm gonna add the whole thing, including the liquid. And if you have it, you can add a can of diced green chilies. I thought that we had some, we don't. So I may stop by the grocery store while I'm out and add that in just because I do like the extra heat that provides. Now for these cannellini beans, I'm going to drain and rinse these before adding them in. So just a quick rinse on those. And for the heat, I'm gonna be using this Frank's Original hot sauce. You can use whatever hot sauce you have and we're adding about 1/2 cup, but you just add whatever amount you're comfortable with. To top it off, we're adding some bone broth. I'm adding, or you can use chicken broth, that's fine. Just about 2 cups, which I think that's about what is left in this container. Just a kind of a quick little stir here, just to get all this mixed in. My chicken's at the bottom. It's gonna cook in all of this. It's gonna be so good. I'm gonna let this cook on low for about 4 to 6 hours, just really letting all those flavors work together. I'm not sure yet if it's gonna need salt. I kind of feel like it is just because we used bone broth instead of chicken broth, but I'll test that at the end. All right, this has been cooking for about 5 hours. I'm gonna pull the chicken out and shred it. Now, you guys know I've said it here before, my preference when making crock pot meals is thighs, but since this is a chili, I think it's okay. Now, doing this also gives me an opportunity to look right here where there's always a little fatty piece that I don't like. To the soup, I'm gonna add, or the chili, I'm gonna add about 4 ounces of cream cheese. And we're gonna let that just dissolve in there. I've also got some Greek yogurt that is coming up to room temperature. We'll end up adding that as well. So I'm gonna put the lid on and just let this kind of combine in there before we add the chicken back in. That cream cheese is starting to get melted in there, so let's add back in the chicken, give it a nice stir, and put the lid back on, just letting everything come back up to temperature, letting all those flavors combine and everything work together. I am putting in the room temperature Greek yogurt, gonna mix it around, and then we're ready to serve. Okay, here's how we're serving ours. I've got some blue cheese crumbles, that we're gonna add to the chili. Some of that green onion that we cut from earlier. And voila. I apologize that I don't have a taste test for this one. We were so busy, but this is one of those recipes that is honestly just so good. You add that blue cheese on the top. I mean, spring, summer, fall, winter, it does not matter. This one is so good, so easy to throw together. I love the concept of just dumping everything in there, and later on you still have a good hearty meal for your family that you put almost no effort into. Y'all, the flavors of this one are so good. I mean, we ate every single last drop because it was delicious. This is a chili that is so common in our household. We've made it multiple times. It's one of those meals where when I'm just not sure what we're gonna have for dinner, I know I can throw this together and I can make it on the stovetop, or if I have planned ahead, I can make it in the crock pot. It comes together actually really quickly. It's also one of those short crock pot meals because everything is pretty much cooked when you put it in there. You just need to heat it all the way through. It's also one of those that can just sit and simmer all day long, and it's even better if that happens. So let's throw this thing together. The first thing that I need to do is cook up some ground beef. This is the economical way to make this. If you want to spend a little bit more money, I would do something like beef tips and cook those same way all day long in the crock pot with everything else. But if you want a more economical recipe, go with the ground beef. Okay, let's get our heat on. This pan, I actually made bacon in it a few minutes ago, so I just used it. It's not all the way clean, but it was just bacon. All right, so we have a pound of ground beef here, and all that I'm doing is just kind of breaking it up. We're just gonna saute the ground beef. My, what's it called? My mix and chop is in the dishwasher. The only seasoning that I'm adding to the ground beef is salt. There's gonna be other seasonings that are gonna go into the crock pot when we cook everything together. So I'm just gonna salt this and make sure that it has good flavor while it cooks up. Okay, while that ground beef cooks, I'm gonna start adding in the ingredients here into my crock pot. So I'm gonna use 2 cans of tomato sauce. So that's all it is, just plain tomato sauce. Sometimes I will add in a can of diced tomatoes, but I think I said it in the last recipe that you guys saw. The cans of diced tomatoes that I have right now are not petite diced, they're pretty large. So I'm gonna pass on that this time, but you can absolutely do that. And I'm adding in a can of chili beans. I'm leaving in the liquid that is with these chili beans because it's like a sauce, like a chili sauce. So that one's gonna stay. However, the next one is this tri-bean blend, and we found this at our grocery store. If you don't have this at yours, that's totally fine. You just buy the kidney beans and the pinto beans and the black beans separately. Either way is fine. Or just don't add beans at all to your chili if you don't prefer it. Okay, so I'm going to drain and rinse these. All right, we can put that whole can in. So really the main inspiration here is not that I'm gonna save a ton of time. It's more that I'm not going to have as many dishes tomorrow. I'm already doing dishes now. I've been in here cooking for the last 2 hours or so anyway, making a ton of different things. I might as well just prep this for tomorrow, put this just like so into the refrigerator, and then tomorrow we just pull it out and dinner. So easy. I'm gonna add some Worcestershire. I don't ever measure this, but it's probably about a tablespoon. We like to add onion powder, so at least a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more. Same with garlic powder, at least a teaspoon. Okay, and then chili powder, which I'm running low on. We probably do about a tablespoon of chili powder. So if you think about it, if you're buying those packets where you, like a chili seasoning packet, it's probably a tablespoon-ish to 2 tablespoons. You can also add some cayenne if you want to add a little bit of heat. There was another one I added last time. Let me check. That's what it was. Ancho chili powder. We added a touch of this last time. This is one of those recipes that honestly, this is kind of the base, but we change it up. We'll add different things. We kind of play around with it, whatever it is that we want, you know, that day. So don't be afraid to add other flavors and spices and things that you enjoy. This is such a versatile recipe. In fact, just looking at it, I think I'm gonna go ahead and add another can of chili beans, but I'm gonna drain that can. So we like a lot of beans in our chili. I know that's controversial. Now the reason I'm able to so easily just add another can of beans, chili beans, is the same reason why this is such an easy recipe for our family and such a common recipe, because this is stuff that we always have available in our pantry, because this is one of those meals I don't even have to think about. I've made it so many times, I can just throw it together in a matter of minutes, throw everything into a big pot or a crock pot, and then we're good to go. So we always have beans available like this. That is one thing I highly suggest. If you have been struggling with finding dinners, find those few dinners that you know that your family really loves and enjoys, and make sure that those ingredients are on hand, especially if they're pantry ingredients. Just keep them in there, because then you can return to it, you know, when you just don't know what you're doing and you want to avoid going out to eat. All right, the beef is done. So I'm just gonna use a slotted spoon here, and then I've reserved one of those cans so that I can put the grease in the can when this is all done. Now, one way that we love to serve this is something called, we've always called it Frito mess. That's what my family called it when I was growing up. So you put Fritos at the bottom of a bowl, which I haven't found a really good substitute for Fritos yet, so that one we haven't been doing quite as often lately. But Fritos at the bottom of a bowl, then your chili, then sour cream and cheese, or in our case, Greek yogurt and cheese on the top, and it is delicious. But this time we're gonna change it up a little bit, and I'm gonna make some really delicious muffins, these cornbread muffins that are gonna go along with it. So stay tuned, because those are coming up right now, and then this will be for dinner tomorrow. I'm gonna make some cheddar apple cornbread muffins. Now you could just make this regular, you know, cornbread style if you want to. That's totally fine. I've got 2 apples here. So ultimately what we're looking for is about 8 ounces of diced apples. I'm gonna go with a pretty small dice, just so we don't have any huge pieces, because these are gonna be muffin style. Let me know in the comments, are you a chili fan? Do you enjoy it? What kind do you like, if you like it? There's so many different ways to make chili. I mean, so many different ways. So I'm curious, what's your favorite kind? Or, you know, what kind did you grow up on? I feel like the recipes that we enjoy as a family, especially a chili recipe, it's usually our go-to recipe. It's usually about the same. Sometimes I'll adjust just very little bits in the recipe, but honestly, most of the time, it's pretty standard. I'm gonna cut this recipe in half. So I'm gonna save this other apple. We're gonna make a half recipe of this, y'all. You know, here's the thing. You know your family, you know what you're gonna eat. Feel free to always cut a recipe in half, in a quarter, double, triple, make it anyway, and then save it so that you can have, put it in the freezer so that you can have it for another time. Y'all, I get this statement a lot on my channel here, okay? I'll get the statement, why did you divide it in half when you could just put it in the freezer and use it for later? Yes, I could do that. However, to be able to continue to have new content for you guys, I pretty much have to cook in between 4 and 6 meals a week. So honestly, at that point, when am I gonna use something that I put in the freezer? Yes, it is nice to have, and sometimes we do have those nights where I need something that's in the freezer, but honestly, a lot of times, I won't be able to use it because I'm having to make new content here. So if that works for your family, absolutely. You should use your freezer, utilize it, make things so that you only have to make it one time. Before I did YouTube, I always had freezer meals ready and available to go, because we wanted to have quick, easy meals that would serve our family. Now, before we move on with anything else, I'm gonna take the apples that I've diced up really fine, they're nice and small, over to the stovetop. I've got a frying pan over there, a nice small frying pan, 1 tablespoon of butter. We're gonna saute these apples in that butter and just really bring out this amazing flavor. Okay, let that tablespoon of butter melt there. Okay, my heat is on a medium-ish, medium-low right now. Let this butter melt, and then we'll put in those apples. Okay, the goal here is a little bit of a caramelization on the apples. So about 5 to 6 minutes, and the sugars that are in the apples are really gonna help it to get that beautiful color and also flavor. Let's add a pinch of salt though. Just a little touch. This would be a great Thanksgiving cornbread. You could probably even add cranberries or something to it if you really want to bring out that Thanksgiving flavor. Okay, while the apples are working, I've got some sage that I'm gonna prep, and you don't have to saute the sage. However, since I already have a pan out, I'm already sauteing the apples. I feel like sage is better if you just cook it up ever so slightly over on the stovetop in just a smidge of butter, and there's already gonna be a smidge of butter in the pan because of the apples. So this is really perfect. I'm taking this little bit of sage, so we just have a couple sage leaves here, and I'm gonna chop them up nice and fine. And this is gonna be for the sage butter, the maple sage butter that's gonna go with these. You can skip this entire part if you want. If you just wanna make the cornbread muffins, that's totally fine. Or even just the cornbread, that's totally fine. Don't feel like you have to do this, but it is a really good butter. So nice and chopped up. And I mean, this will take seconds in that pan once the apples are done. Oh, I should have mentioned too, if you want to peel your apples, please feel free to do so. We don't mind the peel on ours at all. All right, so while those apples are cooking up, I'm just gonna start mixing everything in our mixing bowls over here. So I've got my measuring cups, I've got my mixing bowls, and remember, we're making a half recipe. Starting with cornmeal, we need a half cup. And let me just actually use the half cup measure. 1/2 cup of cornmeal. Okay, so we're mixing together those dry ingredients here. 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. This is unbleached white flour. We need an 1/8 cup of brown sugar. So I'm just gonna do half of my 1/4 cup measurer here. Approximately. Okay, about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I just can't make something like this without sifting the baking powder and the baking soda, because I cannot stand if you get a clump in there, so I gotta do it. See, I mean, there's even clumps in there just like that. Okay, so that was the baking powder. Same with baking soda, about a 1/4 teaspoon. Because this is a half recipe, again, see, clumps. Somebody would eat that, and it would be gross. Okay, the apples are starting to get a nice caramel color to them. Let's whisk together these ingredients, all of our dry ingredients. Now, I did not start my oven yet because I actually was just using my oven for something else. And so it's already hot. It is off right now, but I'm about to turn it back on. So you probably wanna start yours if it's starting from cold as you start this recipe, but it needs to be at 375 degrees. So dry ingredients are nice and combined. I'm gonna put the apples here into this little dish because I'm gonna fry up the sage. I'll wait till I put the muffins in the oven, but we're just gonna really quickly, with even just the leftover little bit of butter that's in there, we're gonna fry up that sage. In this bowl, we need 1 egg, and for us, just a 1/4 cup of oil. I understand this is not the appropriate measuring cup for liquid. I get it, but it's right here. It's available, so I'm using it. It'll be all right. Okay, whisk those together. You could use your mixer if you want, obviously. Okay, that happens pretty easily, pretty quickly. We do need about a 1/2 cup of milk. All right, I went ahead and got out the appropriate measuring cup for my 1/2 cup of milk. Let's whisk that in there. Okay, now we're gonna add in our ingredients, the dry ingredients, and combine. Okay, we can add in the apples and just kind of fold those in. And I need to get out some cheddar cheese because we want to have cheese in our cheddar apple muffins here. Okay, those look good. Let's get out that cheddar cheese. Okay, we're using a white cheddar that we always use. It's Kerrygold, and we just need about 3 ounces. All right, this is nice and mixed together. Now let me get out my muffin tin. We're gonna spray it really well, and then I'm thinking this will probably make about 6. So I'm only gonna spray 6 of these. Goodness. Yeah, I don't like the way that one works. And I'm going to do my best to evenly distribute between 6 of the muffin cups without making a massive mess. And then I guess if I see that we could do more, we'll do more. All right, these muffins are gonna go into that 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. They should be done then, and then they will be ready to eat. While these are in the oven though, we're gonna make the sage butter, the maple sage butter that goes with this. So good. Okay, while those are in there, let's quickly take over this sage that we chopped up. And I'm just gonna, like, seriously, for just a couple seconds, it just takes off the rawness, the raw taste of the sage, and it's really good when it gets a little tiny bit crispy. So we are going to be making this butter. So add in 1 stick of softened butter. This is nice and soft. About a tablespoon of maple syrup. And then a pinch of salt, and then we'll add in those, there's the oven. We'll add in the sage leaves as soon as they're done. Okay, that's literally it. It just takes seconds, and it just takes that raw taste off of the sage. So let's add this over to the maple and the butter that we're gonna make. All right, all that we're gonna do now is just whip this together until all of the ingredients are nice and incorporated. Y'all, I promise I'm not one of those weird people that eats butter, you know, by the stick, but this butter, oh my goodness. It is amazing and delicious. I mean, you're gonna want this butter for everything. Toast, cornbread for sure. What else? We could put this on bagels and it would be delicious. I mean, it is so good. The muffins are done cooking. They're coming out of the oven right now. They've been in for 20 minutes and they have popped up and they look so good. Let's let these cool off before we take them out of the muffin tin.
All right, I feel like we posed this before, but I got a question out there because I'm trying to always be a learner about how you make your chili. So Amber, you might have seen, puts the chili in the bowl first, then the sour cream or the Greek yogurt, then the cheese. And if you had Fritos, you'd do that on top too.
I put them on the bottom. Okay,
so that's one method, is Fritos in the bottom, chili, sour cream, cheese. For me, it's all of it at the bottom. Fritos, sour cream, cheese, which is kind of how I do my coffee. I do the creamer and the sugar first and then the coffee on top.
So there's a method. Why I do the toppings on the top is strictly for presentation purposes, because it looks way better to have the sour cream and the cheese and then parsley and you know, you have all that kind of stuff. Because now that we've mixed everything in, it doesn't look quite as appealing or pretty. So it's more for like video purposes, the reason I do that.
But I'm curious if anybody builds it differently than those couple of methods.
Yeah.
Like there's probably people out there that just put the chili in with all the fixings and you stir it together and then just grab those Fritos scoops And don't even use a spoon.
Right.
But use the scoops,
Right.
which is...
I don't even think I mentioned, this has just been sitting in the crock pot on high for maybe 2 or 3 hours, 3 hours probably.
Yeah.
You can put it on low all day long. This is one of those things, it's not gonna hurt it to simmer it for hours at a time. Everything in there, you can honestly make it in 2 hours. You can make it in 30 minutes over on the stovetop. You can let it cook all day long. Whatever amount of time you have is totally fine. And honestly, today, this was so perfect. I'm so glad that I made this yesterday because today turned out to be a fairly busy day. We're oven shopping. And so it's just been kind of all over the place. So this is a perfect night. We're actually gonna sit outside and have dinner out there.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have had this chili, gosh, you think we've had it 100 times because it feels like it. This is pretty much the standard chili recipe in our house. Obviously, like I said before, I change it up here and there, just a few things, but this is it. This is the chili recipe. Your standard chili.
It is. Yeah.
It's always good.
You can't go wrong with
Right.
that. It's not a sweet chili.
Nope.
It's savory. It's warm.
It also reheats so well. It's almost better the next day. So we never mind when we make a ton of it, and then we can have that for lunch. We actually might have this for lunch.
This is probably
tomorrow.
what's happening after church tomorrow.
I didn't think about.
Yeah.
I didn't plan for tomorrow.
That'll be good.
Okay, these cornbread muffins. Now, he is not a huge fan of cornbread historically. I will tell you, I tasted this butter. This butter needs to go on everything.
Well, most people probably agree with me. Cornbread's really easy to dry out, and then it's flaky, and I don't know anybody that likes it like that. So you have to have a butter, I think, or something like that to combat that.
I think that with this butter, y'all, I almost want you to taste the butter by itself. Like just a spoonful of butter because it's so good.
The funny thing, I almost did the other night when I came home and I saw this little canister in the being stored in the what is that thing? The air fryer. And I looked at it, and I know Amber told me earlier in the day she was making some kind of apple and cheese something or other. So I thought, I wonder if that's what that is. It literally almost took a bite of it with a spoon.
I think the cornbread muffins are good. The apple adds the tiniest bit of sweetness. I think you could go a little heavier on the cheddar, honestly. There's a little bit of cheddar in it, but I was conservative with that. I think you could go heavier, but they're good for sure. I like the apple in there.
Yeah.
But the maple sage butter is truly what takes it over the top. Like honestly, these are really good, but it's good with the chili, right?
We should have had it on our waffles this morning.
No, but seriously,
thinking,
I'm looking forward to to 9 p.m. tonight when I want a slice of toast because I'm about to put this butter on a slice of toast tonight.
True.
It is so good. We actually cannot keep this around.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous. But yeah, I could not do a chili video without just putting our standard regular chili in that we have regularly. And you could probably tell by the way that I am today. It's been a day.
It was a day.
It's a day. So this was the perfect night for chili. Today we're making a brisket chili, and there's a couple different ways that you can go about this one. It is currently 7:57. I need to leave my house at 8:10 to be at church. I am helping to lead worship this morning, and so I'm gonna go the short method, but I'll kind of walk you through what you can do if you really wanna take this up and put a lot of extra effort into it. Now in my crock pot here, I have about 1.5 pounds of beef stew meat. I cut this into a little bit smaller pieces because this is a chili. I don't want large pieces. I want everything to be nice and bite-sized, so it's all ready to go in here. And I'm just gonna start adding things to the crock pot. I took a jalapeno off of our garden and I'm gonna chop that up. I am gonna leave the seeds out though, just so it's not too spicy. I really should have cut this stuff last night. Okay, so just chopping up into little pieces. I want them to be relatively small. Jalapeno going straight into the crock pot. And then you can use green peppers if you prefer. But I'm gonna use these little red peppers also that I just pulled off the garden. One thing I'll say, so as I'm cutting this up, let me explain the first thing that you can do to really level up this recipe, okay? So if you have a couple of extra minutes at the beginning, this is what I would do. Take your stew meat over to the stovetop. And if you have bacon, cook up a couple of pieces of bacon. Then take the bacon out of the pan and brown up your stew meat. Not all the way, but you just wanna add some color to it. Cook all of your peppers in that bacon grease. You can cook peppers, onions, add in the garlic in there, really get it nice and fragrant. So that's what I would do if I had a couple of extra steps. Then on top of that, I would brown the meat. I would get a nice sear on all sides of the meat, just making sure that we have really good, like a smoky flavor almost. Just making sure that we have a really good flavor on the outside of that meat. Okay, where are we at? 8:01, cool. 9 minutes, we can do this. This can also be made not in the crock pot, so please don't feel like you have to do it. You can absolutely make it on the stovetop, Instant Pot, you know, whatever your preference is. It doesn't have to be a crock pot meal for those of you that are not huge fans of the crock pot or just don't have one. Now I'm adding beans, which is a preference. You obviously don't have to, but I got these tri-bean blend. This is from my local grocery store. And if you don't have access to this tri-bean blend, then you want to use 1 can of black beans, 1 can of pinto beans, and 1 can of kidney beans. But all of that is in this tri-bean, which is why we picked up cans of this, because that's what we use in our chili anyway. Drain those off. Okay, I gave mine a quick rinse as well, and I'm adding 2 cans. You could probably go up to 3 though. I'm adding a can of diced tomatoes with the juices and also a can of fire roasted diced tomatoes with the juices. I'm not gonna drain these. If I had 2 cans of fire roasted, I would probably just go ahead and add both of those. This is gonna be a full crock pot. Adding 1 full can of tomato paste, which I know that is a little bit, you know, crazy. Normally you use 1 or 2 tablespoons, but the whole thing. Normally I open the bottom and the top of a can of tomato paste, then you can just push it through. But that can opener is not wanting to do that today. And I don't have time to mess with it, so old-fashioned method. Now, bone broth. I'm using beef bone broth. You can use beef stock, beef broth, whatever your preference is. I'm gonna start at 2 cups or right around there. Okay, now we are going to add all of the flavor. About 1.5 teaspoons of dried oregano. 2.5 teaspoons of cumin, so it's a good amount of cumin here, which we don't mind. Okay, about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Add some pepper just to taste. And about 3 teaspoons of chili powder. 8:07, all right. 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire. I got the low sodium one this time. It's close enough. And I'm gonna add some minced garlic. All right, mix this together as best you can. Probably could have used my larger crock pot. Okay, the good thing is when we get home, we can always add more broth if it needs more. I would prefer my chili to be a little thicker, less soupy, so we'll see how that turns out. Okay, lid on. And in here. Okay, I'm gonna go to high. Really just gonna cook this on high until we get home from church. One thing that I've noticed about the beef tips is that really the longer you cook them, the better they are. So it's probably gonna cook on high for about 4 hours or so, and then we'll check that when we get home and see if it's ready to eat. We just got home from church. We did already eat because right when we walked in the door, everybody was just really hungry. We were ready to go. There was no recording this before sitting down today. A couple of notes though, I think we're both probably gonna take another bite even though we literally just finished eating, just to kind of give our thoughts on this one.
I'm not worried about the other stuff, even though it's really good chili stuff, beans and tomato and all that. My bite is of the beef.
Yeah.
Because that was delicious. Probably said what kind of beef it was. And
yeah, it's just beef tips.
It was cooking on high, but it's so good.
I think when we sat down, he was like, "Oh, there's beef in this, not ground beef." It was like steak. There's steak in this.
Yeah.
And so he was surprised. He was like, "Oh, okay, this is really good."
Yeah.
It feels very hearty because of that, and it kind of changes up. This is actually really similar to the recipe that we probably usually use. I don't usually put tomato paste in mine. I don't usually put beef broth in mine. I usually do tomato sauce, but I guess it's not. I guess it's not the same recipe at all. But having the beef as opposed to the
beef broth, huh? That's interesting.
Well, bone broth.
Yeah.
Beef bone broth.
Yeah. Huh.
Having the beef tips in there versus ground beef, I thought was a great option. And it tastes smoky. It tastes like I don't know how to explain that part of it.
I like that word
smoky.
for it. Smoky. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we have a lot of leftovers.
That's good.
There's more than half.
Chili's always an easy reheat on a week.
Now, when I served ours, typically what we do is a little bit of sour cream and cheese. If we have some sort of tortilla chips or Fritos or something like that, we'll use them. But today we had creme fraiche in the fridge.
Oh, yeah.
And so I put a little bit of creme fraiche on the top and cheese on the top of the chili bowls, and it was really good. Yeah. The beef is so tender. It's really good.
That's so good. So good. Could you, I'm probably wrong on this, but could we empty the rest of the creme fraiche and mix it in and then store it?
I wouldn't. I think it might separate. I think it's just easier to put it in there right before you're serving. And it kind of looks pretty too, because you get the little dollop on the top with the cheese and stuff. But this is a great chili. I don't know let me know in the comments how you guys make your chili. Do you make it with beef tips like this, ground beef, beans, without beans? I know Texas chili, if you're from Texas, you're gonna say no beans, more than likely, because that's been a point of back and forth in the comments before.
And then, you might have Ohioans. They do their chili totally different. Remember those Skyline chili places?
Yeah.
It's sweet chili.
Yeah. This is a good one for sure.
Yeah.
Our verse today comes from Matthew 19:14. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, hit that red subscribe button. You can also hit the notification bell, and it will let you know every time I upload a new video. You don't want to miss these, especially the one that I have listed right here above. Click on that thumbnail because you're going to get amazing recipes here. Have a great week.